Hi, this is Jamal Green, and this video is really about the incident that's going on right now in the Middle East with Israel involving the flotilla and that incident. There's nothing wrong with the visual. I'll say that first. I used a still picture frame on this video because I didn't want to be concerned about the visual and things like that. I just wanted to be able to just speak a little freely. Let me just say this, because people have been asking me where I came down on this issue, and some people have been very curious. So let me just say this: I stand with the people and the nation of Israel. The reason I stand with the people and the nation of Israel is because Israel has the right to ensure the safety of its state and of its people. The blockade that these 6 ships, the blockade that they were trying to run, first of all, this was not just an Israeli blockade. It was also an Israeli and Egyptian blockade. I noticed how the mainstream media routinely forgets, I'll just say to point that out, that it was not just the Israelis, it wasn't just the Jews that were blocking the aid, the so-called much-needed aid for Gaza, that it was also the Arabs, the Egyptians. They also participated in this blockade because they don't want weapons material, bomb-making material, those kind of things being allowed in Gaza. And a lot of times you have these so-called humanitarian ships posing as humanitarian agents, when in fact they have weapons and arms on board, and they deliver those into Gaza, and they deliver the bomb-making material into Gaza, and of course those are the bombs and the mortars that we see being shot from Gaza into Israel. But I stand with Israel. The reason I stand with Israel is because under international law, what Israel did was totally legal. We'll just say that. What Israel did under international law was totally legal. If we go back to the 1960s in America, there was an event, a very serious event. It was called the Cuban Missile Crisis. Under President John F. Kennedy, the Soviet Union had decided that it wanted to, it essentially decided it needed missiles within a closer range to the United States of America. And of course, from Russia, they couldn't do that. So they decided to, make an agreement with Castro in which he would allow their offensive missiles, medium range, inner range and medium range missiles into Cuba. And of course, the Kennedy administration found out about it, and as one of the decisions that they came to in order to stop the offensive weapons from actually going into Cuba was to set up a naval blockade. So the issue of the naval blockade is not unheard of. I'm almost lost for words, and excuse my stuttering, because it's mind-boggling to me. Maybe because I have a background in international law and international relations, global affairs, that I know the history of that this is not uncommon. Naval blockades, this is quite common. Like I said, it wasn't just Israel that was engaged in the blockade against the ships, but it was also Egypt, an Arab nation. These ships, from what I've read, have tried to run this blockade before. So they're doing it on purpose because they're trying to break the blockade. So it's not really about, in my mind, when you have ships that are being aggressive, intentionally trying to break a naval blockade, to me that doesn't show that that organization that has commissioned those ships to go to Gaza, to me it doesn't sound like that they have humanitarian aims in mind. Those are political aims. Those are aims to provoke the Israeli Defense Forces to take action and to cause the kind of international stir and international media outlets that it has caused. by saying the Israelis overreacted. We continue to hear this narrative about, oh, the Israelis, they're always overreacting. They're overreacting. I heard this during 2006, during the Gaza, during the incursion into Gaza, when the Israeli Defense Forces actually went into Gaza. You hear this all the time, whether it's an incursion going into southern Lebanon. When you have a terrorist group in southern Lebanon, Hezbollah, and you have Hamas, that is the elected government of Gaza, controlling Gaza. You have rockets and mortars flying from these areas into your territory, into your state, into your nation. My question is, what would the people who are so quick to condemn Israel, I would like to know what their response would be if they were in Prime Minister Netanyahu's shoes. Because I can assure you that if a province of Canada were shooting rockets and missiles and mortars over the border into the United States of America, I don't think that many of the American people would be asking for restraint. No, we will be asking for whoever is shooting the missiles, shooting the rockets to be dealt with, and we would be looking to our commander-in-chief to deal with those things. So I think it's kind of a double standard. But the fact of the matter is, like I said, it's totally legal. There is no problem with what the Israelis or the Egyptians, for that matter, have been doing or did. The issue really at hand is the whole Palestinian-Israeli conflict. You know, truthfully speaking, both the Jews and the Arabs / the Palestinians have had a presence on that land that we've been fighting, that the world has been fighting over for thousands of years. They have both had a presence on that land. Now, who's had a longer presence? Historically speaking, the Jewish people have had a longer presence. The Jewish people, the presence of the Jewish people goes all the way back to really, like, God, what is it, like the 11th century BCE, with the founding of Israel, the kingdom of Israel under King Saul, and then of course the Davidic dynasty that started a few decades later, not a few decades later, excuse me, a few years later. So they have had a lasting presence on that piece of land, and of course, after the exiles, the captivities, whether it be from Babylonian captivities and Persian captivities, we know that that the Jewish people were dispersed. We know that, and we know that we know that in the 7th century is when the Muslims, after the Jews had fully dispersed out of the land, we know that then the Arabs came back. I believe it was under the caliphate, of Umar. They came back and from that point, from the really beginning of the 7th century, going all the way up into the 1900s, modern day, the Arabs had a strong presence in that area. The fact of the matter is that, I mean, if you want to look at it both sides, then there is a case for why there should be a Palestinian state. But there is also an even greater case of why there should be and must be a Jewish state. And it must remain a Jewish state. Just like the Palestinian state, if they had a Palestinian state, they will want the Palestinian state to remain a Palestinian state. Just like Iran wants Iran to remain a Persian state. I mean, just like Saudi Arabia wants Saudi Arabia to remain an Arab Wahhabi, well, I'm speaking in religious terms now, Wahhabism, which is the dominant religious ideology in Saudi Arabia. They want the society to remain